votes, not just voting for them and forgetting them. Actually, the votes and the legislation. We've grown government to such a size that it is almost mind-boggling how large it is, how complex. It got that way because we were not paying attention. We were not doing our part. And our parties, unfortunately, tell us, get out the vote, get out the vote. They don't tell you have to stay engaged the rest of the time.
Absolutely. And, when you talk about growing government, we talked about this just before the break about Oklahoma's budget. And I'd made a comment about, we need to, they're going to have to prioritize. But James made a great comment off air. James, what were you saying?
I was saying that I disagree with you that they are going to have to find priorities and figure out where they're going to need to cut the $200 to $300 billion. I see it in $1 million. I apologize. I see it in a different light, and I take the words of our governor-elect Mary Fallon, who is not talking about priorities, but she uses words like modernizations and figuring out ways that we can
smaller, smarter government.
Smaller, smarter government, and then look at duplication of services. These are just catchwords that absolutely do absolutely nothing, so they can keep the size of government that they actually want. And my fear is that they'll look at other areas and call them budget enhancements, which will be fee increases, and we've already seen where Floor Leader Dan Sullivan has even suggested that route. We've also have already seen where they have used moral obligation bonds in order to fill those budget holes, so they don't have to cut those budgets, but we just continue to kick that can down the way. It kind of circumvents the whole spirit of the law of a balanced budget. And then we also see where, like sales taxes, for instance, where businesses get a $3,000 deduction because they have to turn in their sales taxes. They want to wipe those types of ideas away, and then tax credits, which that one we are for to get rid of those. But there's going to be other areas in which they're going to look at in order to grow revenue instead of having to cut government. And I feel within my heart that is the direction in which they're going to go. There'll never be priorities taken, and again, it goes back as long as we don't stay engaged. But you would like to,
well, there won't be priorities taken until the people truly stay involved, like we're talking about, and then they're going to have to stay involved. That's right. They have to, once they get involved and stay involved, and the politicians know that they're watching. They're going to have to perform better than what they've done in the past, and so I'm going to stay encouraged this year until I see them going off track again, like they've done in the past.
Well, what happens is that the House is there's 101 members in the Oklahoma House. There are 48 senators on the Senate side. The House members each get to introduce 8 bills. So that's a minimum of 800 bills, and that'll actually be 1,000 with appropriation bills. On the Senate side, they each get to introduce an unlimited number of bills, and they don't have to be. They just have more leeway on the Senate side. Now that is an astronomical number of bills that a citizen has to wade their way through in order to find out. Now, not all those bills, thank the Lord, become law. At the end of session, maybe 400 out of the total will become law. The Senate, I've noticed a trend, passes more laws with fewer people than the House does. So the Senate has more authority, apparently, and also is the final say on what can and cannot become a law, or does and does not become a law. We were talking about that, or James, you mentioned it, is that they're going to find the money someplace, and it'll appear that they're going to cut some sort of an agency, but they're increasing fees. And I'm going to give you an example. Senator Brogdon, because this is when you were senator, is and I don't even know if you voted for this or not. But here's one: there's 700% increase in a fee on the annual user fee for flotation devices. Okay, now it went from $5 on an annual user fee on a flotation device. So you look it up. These words have legal meanings. They have to define what's a flotation device. We're talking inner tubes, rafts,
canoes.
Canoes do not have a motor.
Right.
They also have boats. Boats have a motor. A canoe, there's no pollution with a canoe.
Right.
There's no pollution with an inner tube or a raft. All right, so there's no reclaiming or going to have to tidy up the river after somebody's had a canoe on the river.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, I did not vote for that.
Thank you.
As a matter of fact, I believe I even debated against it.
700% went. Now, this is small. It's small, but if you look at the percentage, it went from $5 to $35.
Yeah, and
plus $1 usage fee for
top of it.
On top of all of that.
Well, and here's the debate and the argument that almost every time, just almost without fail, you'll hear the politicians say, well, we haven't raised the fee for X, Y, and Z for 5 years or for 10 years. And my first question is, so what? Maybe it's time to look at them and maybe even decrease or get rid of the fees, because we need to look and see if we're performing a better service. Are we even performing any service at all with that fee? So just because we haven't raised the fees in a while, and Amanda, and I know James knows this because we've talked about it, but in 2005, our entire state budget was $14 billion. That's with a B. And that's with appropriated funds and government and federal government grants. Last year, 2010, our total state budget was a whopping $34 billion.
Now, statistically, we were in 2005. That's when the Republicans took majority
in the House. Right.
In 2006, in the Senate.
Yeah. I know we were tied in the Senate.
In 2008,
the Republicans took control.
So in that 5-year term, with the Republican majority, we went from $14 billion budget to $34 billion budget.
Yeah, and now
and that was with a balanced budget, mind you.
But most of that new money was federal money, and that's obviously what's bankrupting our entire country. But
may I add that Oklahoma was not at war with anybody?
No, we weren't at war.
This is not defense spending.
But we do, and here's what's amazing: we do have a balanced budget amendment in the state of Oklahoma. But here's how we tend to balance the budget: we add up how much money we have, and then we spend every dime of it, and we call it a balanced budget.
Well, that's what we used to do. Now we count up all the money that we got in state and see how much money we're going to get federally, and see how much money we can spend out of the rainy day fund, and make sure we spend every single bit of it.
And then see how much money we can hoodwink into borrowing with bond issues.
Exactly right.
So
we're in trouble.
Yeah. And all states are in trouble. And again, it's because we have morphed, and Amanda, I'm really not sure when it happened. It happened.
I'll tell you, it happened in the last 5 years.
Well, but no, even before that, there was a trend where government continues to grow. Government expands its authority at every level, but for some reason or another, now the people are now looking at government to basically solve all the problems, and rather than protect my freedom. Rather, that's what government is here for, is to protect my God-given rights of life, liberty, and property. Everything else is pretty much stay out of the way, stay out of my life, and let us, operate the way that we want to. So, but now people want government to help, and every time government helps, it creates havoc within our lives and within our businesses.
There's a famous line from a movie, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, which are terrifying words.
Yeah.
Rather than letting the family or the local unit take care of it, which is what the responsibility is. Just like you said, it's not government's place to solve every single problem. And we'll see that it is not government's place to solve the problem of the 22-year-old man who shot 19 bullets into a crowd, an unarmed crowd in the parking lot of Safeway.
Government's responsibility there is to prosecute that young man to the fullest extent of the law for taking 5 lives and injuring 19.
Yes,
but to your point, Amanda, and I think you're trying to get to it. This is a problem on both sides of the aisle. This is not a Democrat or Republican, and what you are seeing, a little bit different than what Randy's saying, is that we have seen such a spike increase in spending since the Republicans have controlled both the Senate and the House. Now they're going to lean on, well, we had a Democrat as a governor as their little crutch, and thank God they're not going to have that again. But it has been a significant spike since they have come in office. It has taken a sharp increase during that time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And one thing that I have recognized for a long time, one thing you can count on, politicians will take all the money they can take from you, and they'll spend every dime of it. And they do that unabashedly. They just don't. Most of them don't care. They want your money, and they believe that they know how to spend your money better than you know how to spend your money. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I don't believe it for a second. And if we had policies set in place to have a constitutionally ran government, especially at the federal level, we could we could eliminate the federal income tax overnight. And do we replace it with something, the fair tax, flat tax? You don't replace it with anything. All we would have to do is get back to 2005 spending levels to eliminate the income tax. And if we got rid of all of the unconstitutional spending, such as our education department, the agriculture department, the wildlife department, all of these are unconstitutional agencies. They should never have been implemented, yet they are costing us dearly today, bankrupting our nation, and we could get rid of those and live well within our means.
The state has, you're correct, and I agree with you, but the state has also replicated those agencies within the state, and then within the state has to fund them.
That's right.
This canoe thing, and again, we don't have a political position on canoes, except that we're talking flotation devices of these kinds. We're talking about the general guy out there that's going to have an inexpensive form of entertainment to go out and enjoy the rivers. Mm-hmm. And these fees, when I was doing a little bit of searching on it, they go to and are regulated by the Scenic Rivers Commission. Well, this commission is an extra, I don't want to say extra biblical, but they're an extra governmental entity that has regulatory authority. And what are they doing with the money? Well, they're doing with the money is that with this increase, they're going to be able to buy up access land to the rivers. Yeah. Well, then that means this extra governmental agency can then control access and restrict and limit access to the rivers. So and I know that's part of sustainable development.
Well, it is, and I don't even support the Scenic River program. I don't believe Oklahoma should have one, but it's been here for years, and it has grown exponentially, just like every other government program. You get it in there just a little bit, and it explodes and takes over.
Right, it's mission creep.
That's it.
So somebody has to be wise enough to recognize when an idea like that, these commissions are suggested that there needs to be a commission. Eventually, there's going to have to be a bureaucracy that supports it, and funding will be directed that way, whether it is not going to be appropriated funding, but it's going to be funding that's going to be on the backs of the people through fees. And I'm sorry, this sounds like we're not, because we're against or would say this is ridiculous to have a Scenic Rivers Commission is not the same thing as saying throw your trash in the river. That is not; those two are not.
Don't even relate to each other.
Don't even relate to each other. It is my observation, by middle 50s now that I've seen a lot. Most people don't intentionally destroy anything. Yeah. It's accidentally. People don't go out and intentionally destroy their own land. They don't intentionally destroy their crops. They don't intentionally create pollution. Now, in some instances, people are doing things improperly, and that should be controlled. It goes back to being a moral people, and having shared values,
and a good neighbor,
and being a good neighbor. It is correct. But government has really exceeded its bounds. And what I find frustrating when we're talking to the legislators, some of them act like you're speaking a foreign language, and it's a little unnerving. We continue to advocate for people to be involved in the legislative process, and again, to know who your own state elected officials are. Invite them out for a cup of coffee. They're regular folks. Express what your concerns are. Put their contact information in your cell phone and in your email list. And then when your sessions start, February 7th, 2011, is that you are already in contact. You don't wait for the session to start because the bills are already written.
Right.
Let's get back to the bills. On the House side, the bill process is controlled by the Speaker of the House. The Speaker in 2004 was given power to appoint committee chairmen. The bills get distributed to the committee chairman. If they're all picked by one person rather than the caucus, it is possible for an outside influence just to control the Speaker of the House. He controls who the committee chairmen are. The committee chairmen make the decision about which bills presented into those committees ever get out of those committees and get a vote on the floor. Now, this was a rule that was changed in 2004 by advice of a political consulting organization to control the legislative process. And what ends up being, when the result is that you have constituents in home districts that have no representation because their legislators' bills never had a chance of getting out of committee. So in essence, you've got about a district that has typically 35,000 people in it with no representation.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to comment on that?
Well, sure, and that is a problem.